Thanks, John. So Rule 14 is part of Section B, which includes a set of general limitations. They don't unwind the previous rules that we've just went through, but they add clarification and expand upon what are the responsibilities of both the right-of-way boat and the non-right-of-way boat in this section. So the first rule in this section is 14, which is essentially don't run into each other, avoid a collision, and we're going to go deeper into that in a moment. It talks about, in Rule 15, giving room when you obtain the right-of-way, what your responsibilities are there. Rule 16 covers explicitly the responsibilities of a right-of-way boat not to change its course in such a way that a non-right-of-way boat can't avoid them. And Rule 17 speaks to a boat ahead has certain advantages, especially in a windward-leeward situation. So we'll look at the scenarios there to see how that plays out. So Rule 14 is really very basic in this section, and it really says nothing more than a boat shall avoid contact with another boat if reasonably possible. However, a right-of-way boat, or one entitled to room or mark room, and we'll cover mark room later under Rule 18, the right-of-way boat does not need to avoid contact until it's clear that the other boat is not keeping clear or giving room. So you remember this scenario back to our port starboard example when our starboard boat, didn't feel port was going to take action. So at that point, an obligation kicked in for them to avoid contact. The rule goes on to say that the right-of-way boat shall be exonerated, meaning they won't be penalized, if they break this rule and the contact does not cause damage or injury. So what's really important about this language is what it doesn't say. What it doesn't say is, the inverse of B is if it does cause damage or injury, this part of the language does not kick in. What that really means is the right-of-way boat does not have the right to hit the non-right-of-way boat and cause damage or injury. So this is very strongly supported by the appeal and case book that we've referenced earlier. This particular scenario speaks to, what is a reasonable opportunity to keep clear, and it also speaks to how the right-of-way boat's responsibilities, to avoid damage. This particular scenario was reviewed as a case because there was significant damage between the boats. So this particular case helps the interpretation to determine who is really at fault in an example where there was substantial damage to both boats. And as we've referenced the case book, the cases really do help judges as they're sitting on protest juries interpret these rules based upon these situations having happened in the past. So I won't go through the whole decision, but I do want to cover for a moment the principles of Rule 14. The first principle is, damaged boats is not fun. It's not why we love this sport and want to participate. Hurting people is never an acceptable action, so we have to avoid that at all costs as competitors. It's better to avoid a collision in protest than to hit someone to prove that they're wrong. So the days of I have to come in and tag somebody and create a little damage to prove my case in the protest room are gone. If I cause damage as the right-of-way boat, I'm going to get disqualified by that jury just like the other boat will if it goes to hearing. So that's Rule 14 in a nutshell, and I'll turn it over to John to cover Rule 15.